The Last Voyage of the Demeter, or Dracula on a Boat,
Yeah.
is the newest horror film that we got to see tonight. This dropped today in theaters, of course, because we got to see things the days they come out. Now, this follows the story of the ill-fated ship, the Demeter, in its last days as it transports cargo from Romania to London.
hmm
And who's on board?
Dracula.
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 You got to sound
Count
cooler
Dracula.
when you're saying Dracula.
Sorry, I sound
It's
cooler
okay.
next time.
This was shockingly not a prequel to Renfield from earlier in the year.
It was not.
Thought it was going to be like a Pearl X thing.
That would have been fun.
Yeah, but no Nicolas Cage in this movie.
No, he's not in this.
A much different Dracula than the one in that
very different.
So, okay, this is brought to us by director Andre Overdahl, who I know from Troll Hunter, Autopsy of Jane Doe, and Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is a really cool film. Kind of like that entry-level horror that's like for 12 up, right? And Autopsy of Jane Doe has some fantastic atmosphere to it. And then Troll Hunter is a very cool found footage film that we actually need to cover for Found Footage Friday at some point.
Yeah.
But a very good director. So I had pretty high hopes with this one. And especially, this is a story that we all know, right? If you've seen Dracula, which there's about 674 million iterations.
Yeah, there's a ton.
I actually, I don't know if this is still the case. I'm sure that it is. But the most portrayed character in film
is Dracula. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
He's iconic.
And we've already seen 2 this year. So just keeps adding.
Yeah.
Dracula's never going to die.
He literally never dies.
No, it doesn't seem to. So, yeah, I mean, this is set in 1897. And it follows that ship that brings Dracula over. And we all know what happens to the crew on board. So this is one of those stories where it takes place kind of like in the middle of a story, or it's that like thing that somebody mentioned, like in Rogue One, obviously we hear about the rebels who stole the Death Star plans. Right. And then it's like, what's that story? This is that, because in any Dracula movie you've ever watched, this story is really quick.
Yeah.
Right. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, whatever, we get on the ship and then you see like turbulent weather and he's below decks and then he's there. Right? It's very, very quick story. So to see what's going on here is a cool idea for a film. This film is very beautifully shot.
It is.
It has a very high production value. The ship feels very lived in, very real. The crew feels like a real crew. We got some familiar faces here, some unfamiliar faces here. And so anyway, getting to the point, getting to our review now after all of that. This was a film I was really looking forward to. I was pretty surprised by the trailer just because I thought it was a really cool idea for a film, as it not being something that has been told before in this way with Dracula, and it's hard to be original with Dracula, but this is that kind of untold story of Dracula that we kind of all know, so to speak. And so I was really, really looking forward to this movie. And even though it is wonderfully shot, really well acted, it's a very good movie.
It is.
Right?
Right. Objectively, it's a good film.
I was just underwhelmed by it because the film, and I don't know why I would expect anything different, because it's exactly kind of what I expected from the film. Because we know the beats, because we know how it's going to end, because we know the story, I don't know exactly how they could have told it differently.
Right.
But it's just so straightforward.
Yeah.
And also, it is a tad repetitious, right? Because we spend many nights on the ship, and the same thing kind of happens every night.
Yes, it does.
Also, and this is always going to be a complaint from me, and this isn't going to be a thing for a lot of like casuals or like non-gore hounds or anything.
Right.
But the kills in this movie are pretty lame, right? There's some stuff that's cool, but
not all of them, which is what you were like hoping for, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything that you're saying. I also, like, full disclosure, was tired during the film, so that also kind of contributed to the underwhelmingness, I feel like, because I was tired on top of it being repetitive and all of that. But I really like the way Dracula looks in this. Yeah. I was a really big fan, and like finding out that most of it was practical effects is pretty cool.
Even though if that is true, it is mostly practical. It does look fairly CGI.
It does.
So that's weird to me that this is supposed to be more practical than CG, because it looks more CG than practical. So
I don't know. I liked the way it looked, though. I thought it looked cool.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fan of that. And yeah, I mean, I'm a vampire fan in general. I typically really like vampire films. But I just think this one is for like the geeky fans of Dracula that want to see that Rogue One story.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take any risks as far as the subgenre goes. It doesn't introduce anything new to the story of Dracula that like is new to the lore. Yeah. It just expands upon what we already know happened. And that's fine. It's like we said in the beginning, it really is a beautiful film. It's shot very well. The acting is really great. But it's not one that, like, if you aren't a vampire movie person, if you're not a Dracula person, you might not enjoy this.
We saw this movie with our friends Tony and Victoria, and Tony is a big Dracula guy. I didn't even know this, but I guess he was very familiar with the books, and because of that, he was super into it. Mm-hmm. We talked about it after. Him and Victoria. Victoria was also really into it. And she's, from what I remember, she didn't say anything about her affinity for Dracula or anything.
No, she was
more of like a super casual
for Dracula
fan, and he was like more of a hardcore.
And they both liked it.
And they both were super into it. As to where I'm definitely not super casual when it comes to film in any regard. And obviously I've seen like a trillion freaking vampire movies at this point, and vampires are not my thing, and Dracula's not my thing either, because he's a vampire. But I was really excited for this one because my problem with vampire movies typically is that they focus a little bit more on the drama and the romance, which I love romance movies. It's not that. It's just in the way they do it, it just kind of stifles the film a bit for me in being a horror film and all that. I do love Bram Stoker's Dracula, though, Francis Ford Coppola's. But putting that aside, with this, it's the fact that, like, in most vampire movies, a lot of them just look like regular dudes or whatever, and then they kind of vamp out for a minute, and then they just kind of bite into people's necks, and then people kind of slump over and whatever, and it's very rinse, lather, repeat. Yeah. It's very it's very uninteresting. It's just not something that I enjoy, because I am a gore hound, because I do like the violence, because I do like the really scary kind of aspects of horror, the more romanticized gothic horror and stuff. That's just not my personal flavor of horror that I love. So with this, I was like, when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this is much more like Nosferatu, like bat-looking man creature, descent type looking monster. Yeah. And because of that, I was thinking, oh, this thing's going to be vicious. Yeah. This thing is going to be brutal. And while it is, technically, it's not graphic, right? Even though it is this monster, it's not tearing people apart. It's not breaking into them and like sucking the freaking bone marrow out of their bones, or like ripping their heads off and sucking the blood out. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I would have loved to have seen personally, because it is a monster, more creature feature versus like a more man vampire.
I think that the time to do that too, because like the whole thing with vampires is that they can blend in with regular humans and they manipulate and they
Yeah.
like play mind games and everything. But the time to make them monstrous is when they are at their weakest. So this was definitely the film to be like ultra gory, show all the kills and all the violence and everything. Because the other thing is, when people or creatures, when anything is starving, like it's so much more desperate and violent than it would be if it was plump and fully fed. So yeah, I do think it's a missed opportunity to get more violent and graphic with this, because it doesn't go into it.
And that's not my only complaint. And I don't even absolutely need that. I would have preferred it, of course, but it is just how straightforward it is. It is how repetitive the film can become, that I just kind of felt myself become not. I don't want to say I was ever bored. I was just losing interest.
Yeah.
As the movie was wrapping up, I was like, okay. But it was always gorgeous to look at.
Yes.
It was always well acted. It always kept me engaged enough. So I was just like, this is good. It's a good movie, right? Like if you're a big Dracula fan and you're somebody that's like, I want to see a whole movie on the Demeter. Perfect. Here you go. This is it, right? Like if you ever watch Dracula, or if you ever watch Bram Stoker's Dracula, or any of these iterations, and they do that story of the Demeter, and you're like, ooh, I want to know what happened on that ship.
Yeah.
I mean, this is that, right? So I'm glad it exists for fans of Dracula.
Yeah.
I'm just not them, they were on an uphill battle with me to a degree, just because this isn't my subgenre of choice. And ultimately, they delivered me a good movie that I found underwhelming for my expectations going off of a trailer, but that's my own fault, I suppose. Funny enough, Victoria had the exact opposite. She thought the trailer and whatever, she was not expecting to like this, and ended up really enjoying it. Yeah. So expectations can definitely, hinder your experience.
Sure.
I'd like to point out that I never know how to say this guy's name. What do you think, David?
Dastmalchian?
Something like
I'm not
that.
Sure.
I mean, I've seen this guy
he's in so many things.
And
everything that he's in, he honestly is like such a talented actor, because I feel like he plays a different person in every movie.
Well, okay, like, he plays a crazy guy a lot.
He does play crazy guy a lot, but he also plays he just plays eccentric really well.
But he's a good standout here, as he always is. I think he's that second tier actor, that like character actor that's always in the background of every movie, and really lends his talents very effectively to a film, and doesn't get that credit. And I was glad to see him more front and center. He has a much more meatier role here than he typically gets. When he's in stuff like The Dark Knight or Prisoners or Suicide Squad or Oppenheimer recently, the dude's in literally fucking everything. He always plays like a character for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I guess in Suicide Squad he's in that a little more, but I'm just saying he doesn't get a lot of time. But he's great in this, and I could not help think the entire time he looked like Robert Pattinson in The Lighthouse. I thought it the whole movie, and I kept focusing on it and being like, he looks so much like him in this movie. It's funny.
The mustache and the hat and everything.
The captain is the dude from Game of Thrones. Davos, that's a character I really love from Game of Thrones. So he was very good.
Yeah.
Corey Hawkins, who plays Clemens, he's good.
Yeah.
And then the girl what do you think? Aisling friend.
I forget how to say that, because it's not like Aisling. It's like pronounced differently. It's like, I almost want to say it's like Ashley or something weird. It's a weird pronunciation. I don't know.
She's the star of a movie called The Nightingale, which is directed by Jennifer Kent, who directed The Babadook. And that movie is absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen it, I couldn't recommend it higher. Excellent, excellent film. And it's set in a similar time period. I mean, that's more Civil War, even though it doesn't take place in America. It's like early 1800s, 1825. But she's excellent in that, and she's very similar here as a character. Really good. All the performances, solid as hell. I think everyone brings it. As I said, the world feels very real. The monster fits really well into the tone. The atmosphere, the look of the film, the aesthetics, the production value, the score, the direction, all that stuff is good.
Yeah.
It's all very good.
Yeah.
It's a good movie that I just wanted more from. That's I feel like I'm being greedy. I'm being,
I don't feel like you are. I get it.
I don't know.
I agree with you, so.
But it's a bummer because this was a big one.
Yeah, it was.
Of the year. We were really excited for this one.
Yeah, expectations and hopes for it, but it's not making my top 10. I will tell you that much.
No, but
it's definitely not. But it's still a good film. Like
it's a cool movie.
Like,
it's a cool movie.
We are recommending it
for Dracula fans who are looking forward to this because of the trailer and are going to be okay with all the things I said aren't in it.
Yeah, and people that are obviously like super open to films and like want to see all horror movies anyway. Like if you're like us, of course you should check it out and see what you think.
Sure, it's a quality film.
It is.
For
it's
you
not.
To go
it's not
see.
a waste of time or anything.
No.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really have much more to say.
No, I don't either. But that's that. Let us know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to become repetitive and redundant.
Yeah.
Just like some of this movie is.
Yeah.
Oh, and the kid is from Cobweb, you said.
Yes.
Yeah. I had to point that out because Cobweb was a big surprise of the year.
Yes, it was.
And, so there you go. Sorry. Had to throw that in there. We got to go to bed.
Bye.